Dr. Jonathan Marshall to give his reflections on David Marshall, my father.
Among my earliest memories of my father are lying curled up in bed with the sound of the air conditioning on and feeling the soft sheets while we discussed our favorite philosopher, Dr. Seuss. And as my father would explain, today is your day. You're off to great places. You're off and away. You have brains in your head and shoes in your feet. You can steer yourself in any direction you wish. When I think of my father's life, he embodied much of that spirit for me. He was born in a fairly poor family. At times he had no shoes, and doctors wouldn't come when there were medical emergencies because they couldn't pay the bills. He wanted to be a successful lawyer, which probably seemed to some people as very unrealistic, and it required a lot of sacrifice. He may have even had tuberculosis as a result of overstudying for an exam and a scholarship, which he was too sick to actually eventually take. But he eventually did go to London and went to law school. And he confided one time that some students got together to get some money so that he could buy shoes that didn't have holes. When he eventually came back to Singapore, he had a room and was waiting to don his wig for the first time. And there were no clients. And very much, I think, at the mercy of his chief clerk, waited until there was a knock at the door one day, and a lady popped her head round and then disappeared again. And my father said, "Well, what was that?" And the chief clerk explained that she wanted to engage him as her attorney because she had been told by a fortune teller that if she could find the man whose eyes were like those of a fish, that she could win her case. My father won the case, and the dream was born to become a successful lawyer. But it wasn't all easy, and as he explained when I was curled up in bed, wherever you fly, you'll be the best of the best. Wherever you go, you will top all the rest. Except when you don't, because sometimes you won't. I'm sorry to say, but sadly it's true, that hang-ups can happen even to you. You can get all hung up in a prickly perch. When your gang will fly on, you'll be left in the lurch. You'll come down from the lurch with an unpleasant bump, and the chances are then that you'll be in a slump. Unfortunately, my father was quite familiar with slumps. He hadn't always been approved of by the PAP, and on one occasion was disbarred from the law. He was outraged at what he felt was a miscarriage of justice, and said to the Sultan of Pahang at the time that his intentions were to go to the Privy Council to have this miscarriage of justice reversed. The Sultan wisely perhaps told my father that if indeed his intention was to set up a practice in Pahang, that would be a fine and good thing to do, but should he have any ambitions to stay in Singapore, he should think twice. My father thought twice, and he decided not to pursue that, and perhaps focus more on the family and less on things that might take him to prison. This dexterous tension between pragmatism and idealism was not a simple one for him. And a few weeks before he died, he asked me to come to his bed and said to me that his greatest regret was not pursuing what he believed in more, that he felt he should have been more willing to risk going to prison for the benefit of other people and for his own sense of integrity, and that cowering or giving way to pressure was something that had lived with him till his deathbed, and that he asked me to be careful not to let my own sense of integrity or my own courage be swayed by threats from other people. He was someone who believed very much in fighting the good fight, even if you're not sure you're going to win. And when he died, I'm not sure if he thought himself as somebody who had won. He was passionate about Singapore. He felt he had done some part, but he clearly felt he could do a lot more, and ached to do that. I think people of my generation find that a little hard to understand, this sort of passionate desire to serve something as amorphous as a country, as if it were a person. But he genuinely had that. He said to me many times, "Just never forget to be dexterous and deft. Never mix up your right foot with your left. Will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98.75% guaranteed. Jonathan, you'll move mountains. So while he may not have been sure when he died that he was in that 98.75%, I think in some ways by the fact that we're here today, which is something that would have really surprised him and delighted him, that in some ways if we take the great philosophers' proportions of 98.75% and 1.25%, that perhaps he did in some extent succeed, and I know he's inspired me. So I'd like to end on a note which for me resembles his spirit, because if we were to celebrate the past, I think we would miss what I think is most important about my father, which is a message about the present and the future. So before finally tucking me in and kissing me goodnight, he would make a final quote from our philosopher. So be your name Boxbaum, or Bixie, or Brea, or Mordecai Ali Van Allen O'Shea, or Jonathan Ruth, Joanna or Sarah, you're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way.